Hi, Charles.
Hey, how you going, Alex? You good?
I'm good. How are you? Welcome. Hi, Philip. Hi, Danny. Hello, John. Thanks for being here, guys. Right, so while people are jumping on, I am under the instructions to share a little disclaimer. So bear with me one moment while I just get that up. So just for everybody, if you can just take a couple of moments just to read this. So it's just basically saying that anything that we share on today's webinar is not necessarily the opinions of Scrap the 9 to 5. They are the opinions of myself or those that are sharing. So we don't blame Dan for that, basically. Okay, so hopefully you've all had a look at that now. So great to have you here. Thanks all for being here. So for those of you, I know some of you, this is the first time I'm meeting you. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Alex Franklin, and I am one of Dan's Mastermind Experience members. And I've been with the SFM now for just over a year. So it was the 5th of July, 2018 that I joined SFM. So it was obviously a memorable day because I can remember it exactly, which I guess most of you can. You can probably all know the exact date when you joined SFM. So the idea of these webinars is to offer something a little bit different to the Scrap the 9 to 5 community. If you've been on Dan's weekly webinars, they are amazing. But when you're new, they can be a little bit like totally over your head, right? And it's a lot of technical stuff, a lot of jargon, a lot of new information, which Dan is amazing at answering. That is not my strong point, so this webinar is going to be nothing like that. So don't expect that, okay? So what we are going to talk about today is one of the topics that I think is one of the biggest things that holds people back from starting their online business. And that topic is overcoming fear. So fear in general. And I think for me, it's really only been in the last few months that I've realized how much fear has held me back and slowed down my progress. And I maybe didn't even realize that a lot of the things that was happening were to do with fear. So what I'd like to do is share a little presentation with you and give you some of the examples and some of the things that I've learned. And then afterwards, we'll open it up and you guys can share and we can have a bit more of a discussion, okay? How does that sound? Good? Thumbs up? Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen once again and just let me know. Can you guys, oh, hang on, I can't see you right now. 1 second. Okay, can you guys see this? Thumbs up, yeah? Got it, okay, great. Okay, so overcoming fear when starting your online business. So there are 5 types of fear. Whoops, I skipped a page. Here we go. There are 5 types of basic fears. And pretty much every single time that us as human beings experience fear, they come under one of these 5 categories. At least this is according to Dr. Carl Alberchet. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So I'm going to whiz through these first 3 because I don't think they're that relevant to us. But the last 2, we're going to spend a bit more time on. So basic fear of extinction, fear of death, right? That's a pretty big one that most human beings experience, okay? And then we've got mutilation, which is basically the fear of like any body part being injured, physical boundaries being invaded, that kind of thing. And then loss of autonomy or loss of control. So this is like fear of being paralyzed, restricted, imprisoned, something where we fear losing control. Okay, so most of those are to do with our physical being. Okay, so I would say that they're pretty genuine fears to have, and we should really be paying attention to those. Okay, now slightly different to these last two. So these last two, the fear of separation, which is fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of the loss of connectedness, fear of like not being respected or valued by those around us. And now this is one that this comes from our days when we lived in tribes, right? So it's like deeply ingrained in our genes. So if you think back to the time when we lived in tribes, if we were separated from that tribe for some reason, if we were rejected, if we had lost the respect of our tribe, if they didn't want us around and we no longer like belonged with the tribe, we would really struggle to survive on our own. So we needed the tribe to be like for our survival. You know, we needed the tribe so that we could hunt and shelter and all of the things that we needed to survive. So this is deeply ingrained in us, and this one I think comes up a lot when we do anything new, and you know, starting an online business and going down this path of entrepreneurship is definitely one of those things where this can come up a lot. And then the fifth and final one is ego death. So another one I think is huge for entrepreneurs, online business owners. It's the fear of humiliation, shame, and any other mechanism of profound self-disapproval. So anything that threatens our construct of self, okay? So again, it's like, you know, we don't want to put ourselves out there because we're worried about what people will think. We're worried about losing the image we have of ourself, and how if that gets shattered, that is like a huge fear that we have as human beings. So give you a couple of examples just to like really try and get that to be a bit more clearer. So if you go, like, for example, if we go back to like extinction, okay, fear of death. So fear of heights, that comes from basically a fear of extinction. Yeah, like you're afraid that you might fall and die. It's that simple, right? A fear of, for example, snakes or dogs would come under mutilation, okay, because you might fear your physical well-being. Okay, loss of autonomy would be like claustrophobia. Yeah, like people have a fear of being in confined spaces. This would come under loss of autonomy. Separation is really going to be your fear. Can you hear my cat meowing? Sorry about that if you can. Got a noisy cat in the background. Fear of separation is anything to do with how others perceive us. So fear of judgment, fear of failure. And they can also come under ego death as well, because like public speaking, for example, one of the biggest fears in the world is public speaking. And really what that boils down to is a fear of humiliation or shame. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to give you some examples here. Sorry, I'm just trying to see. I can't see you guys on the screen. So just unmute and shout if you can't see or hear anything at any point, okay? So some examples in the early days of your SFM journey that you might come across is, I've made a list here. So for example, the first hurdle that I think a lot of people experience is the first time that they have to write a blog, or when they come to do their About Me page. And it's that first place or first time where you're having to like put yourself out there and kind of share yourself with the world. Yeah, and that can be so daunting, it can be so scary, and a lot of the time procrastination will kick in and we make all sorts of excuses not to do it and delay ourselves from taking that step. Okay. Other examples, the 90-day video journey. So I know for myself, when I first joined the 90-day video journey, which would have been, I guess it was around September, October time last year, I did the 90-day video journey. And, you know, getting on camera for the first time, it's painful, right? I mean, not many people really enjoy that experience. And everybody, at least most people, tend to really struggle with that. So, you know, you have all of that negative self-talk, you have all of that criticism in your head. You know, you're your own worst critic, right? You look at yourself and what you've said and you just cringe because you're like, oh my God, what am I saying? Or what do I look like? And that can be another place where we might get stuck on this journey. Joining your first webinar. Well, you're all here today. I don't know if for any of you it's your first webinar, but joining your first webinar can also be really terrifying. And I remember that in the beginning, I would just hide in the background for a long time. I didn't come out really on webinars until earlier this year. And I started to attend Dan's Marketing Mastery webinars that he does on a Tuesday afternoon. And I remember the first few times when I actually was brave enough to like be on the panel, which we haven't got a panel on this webinar, so you can all see each other. But on the Marketing Mastery course, you have to raise your hand and say like, I want to be on the panel. And I didn't do that initially, and I just stayed in the background and watched. But as I was like progressing with my business, I needed to ask questions, and I needed like answers, and I needed help. And I realized that the people who were getting on the panel and getting their questions asked and getting the answers, they were making progress in their business. So eventually I was brave enough to go ahead and be on the panel. And even then, I remember like I'd put my question into the chat box, and as it got closer and closer to my question, I would feel like panic and fear rising, like the most ridiculous thing, right? All I'm doing is talking to another human being, but that was my experience of joining like the first few times I went on a webinar. So I don't know if anybody can relate to that. So it's quite interesting to look back over a period of just like 4 or 5 months, and here I am now leading my first webinar. So it's you know, a lot can happen in a short amount of time. Other places you might find fear, your first Facebook Live, another one for me. On the Transcend You challenge that we did recently, it was one of the goals that I had. It was one of the things on my list. That I would do a Facebook Live once a week, because I wasn't comfortable with them yet. And I knew that because I felt resistance, I knew that there was a fear there that I had to overcome. And I think after about 3 weeks of being on the challenge, you couldn't keep me off the Facebook Live. I was in the Facebook group every time something exciting happened, every time I had some inspiration and wanted to share, like, you know, I ended up being quite active in that group. Your first SFM event. So another one where, I mean, some people will even avoid going to an event for the fear of like actually being seen, for the fear of being rejected, for the fear of, you know, feeling that they don't belong, or being worried about what will happen, being nervous to meet new people. I didn't really have that experience, but I did find that the first event I went to, which was in October, I went to the Elite Influencer in London, and my experience was, I was very comfortable talking to other people and meeting SFM members, but when it came to like putting up your hand to answer a question like directly to Justin, because Justin Wolf was hosting those 2 days, or going up on stage when he invited people to come up on stage, I was not at all like ready for that, and I would just hide. And it took me it wasn't until the second day when I got the courage to actually go and introduce myself to Stuart Ross, who had been at the back of the room for the whole time. So yeah, your first event could be another one. And then obviously creating like your first advert, whether that's on YouTube or Bing or Facebook or wherever it is that you're doing your marketing, and posting, for example, your first YouTube video. So these are a bunch of examples just to give you an idea of some of the hurdles. And believe me, as you go on this journey, there'll be many more. So the question is, what do we do about it? Well, I wanted to share, first of all, this quote from President Franklin Roosevelt. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. So I love this quote because really what happens when we experience fear is that our mind goes off into this imaginary world of a worst case scenario. And our mind is really good at thinking up some pretty awful situations that might happen, right? But the reality is that that's hardly ever the case. That's not really what happens. It's very rare that the worst case scenario will actually become a thing. And in that case, when we can realize that, then really the only thing that we actually have to fear is the fear itself. And that's because the fear will hold us back from being the person that we want to be, from getting to the next step where we want to get to. Okay, so I wanted to share that with you. So what can we do about it? So this is the a few steps here that we'll discuss together, and I'm going to whiz through them, but then we'll pick them apart and discuss them together afterwards. So number one is awareness. So the first thing that we need to realize is that there is a problem. Okay, we have to recognize that there's some resistance, and this I've put and or procrastination because it often can show up in the form of procrastination. So if you find yourself, if you know that the next thing on your to-do list, the next thing that is going to have a big impact on your business, if you know that you're not doing it and you're feeling some kind of resistance to it, the chances are that there's some fear there about what that will mean and what the outcome of that will be. Okay, and in that situation, once we get the awareness that there's a problem, then we can do something about it. So anytime you feel that resistance, just stop and ask yourself why. Like, what is it that you know you've got this thing on your to-do list, it's been sat there maybe for days, maybe for weeks, and you know that that's the thing that's going to have the next big impact on your business. You know it's what you need to do. Like maybe it's shooting your first YouTube video or uploading your first YouTube video. And in that situation, ask yourself what meaning you've given to it. So whatever the fear is, there'll be some interpretation, some meaning that you've given to that. So like, for example, during the Transcend You challenge, one of my goals was to start producing more videos for my YouTube channel. You know, I hadn't really posted much on there. I'd been busy doing other things, and I wanted to have like an awesome YouTube channel full of value for my members, for my apps, and, you know, to help with organic marketing as well. And I used to look at other people's YouTube videos who had thousands of subscribers and hundreds of videos, and I would just think, oh, but like, they're so far ahead, and, you know, they're so good. And, you know, like mine is like, I've only got 5 subscribers or something like that, you know, I've only got 5 videos, and it would stop me from adding more videos to my YouTube channel. It would stop me from doing anything else because I was comparing myself to others. But in the end, because I had this challenge and I had held myself accountable to it, it was part of this big public Transcend You challenge that was introduced at Momentum Day. If you're not familiar with it, Stuart Ross introduced it at Momentum Day in London in March. And I really couldn't procrastinate on this. And that was when I became aware of this habit that I had of procrastinating when I was experiencing fear. And when I really looked at it, what it boiled down to was me making more videos on YouTube, me putting myself out there on YouTube was scary, because I was going to be expressing myself, my opinions, my beliefs with the world. And what if they didn't like it? What if they rejected me, you know? So that fear of separation was very prevalent there for me. So when I understood that and I could look at the meaning that I'd given it, I then had the opportunity to ask myself, like, is that true? You know, is it true that if I put a video on YouTube, like the whole world is going to see it and the whole world is going to reject me? Like, you know, so having the awareness is the first step. And now leading on to that, which is where I'm kind of already going, is number 2 is to embrace the worst case scenario. So as I said before, your mind will have this amazing ability to make things a million times worse than like probably what is going to happen, right? So what's the worst case scenario? So in my example, okay, if I really want to be extreme, worst case scenario, I put a video on YouTube, it's awful, it goes viral, everybody like slates me, I get criticized, I get laughed at, I'm humiliated, it's just total embarrassment. And okay, if that happens, what am I going to do about it? So that's the next step. What's the worst case scenario, and what will you do if that happens? Well, if that was to happen, sure, that would be pretty awful, but would it stop me? Like, would I just like, I'm not going to die, I'm still safe, like what would I do? And in that scenario, you know, I would pick myself up again, I would dust myself off, you know, yeah, it may take some time, but I would get up and I would try again. And the thing is, if the goal that you're trying to achieve, if the worst case scenario was to happen and the goal that you're trying to reach, you still want it, if you still want that goal, even after the worst case scenario has happened, then none of these things are bad things. And you can actually just see it as a stepping stone on the journey. And if you can then accept it, so if you can accept that, okay, if that worst case scenario happens, what would I do about it? Okay, I can accept that. I would still want to be working towards my online business. I would still want to be growing my YouTube channel. Then instead of that being this huge fear that stops us from making any progress, stops us from like taking those next steps that we need to take, we can instead see it as a massive opportunity for growth. And when you change your mindset to see things in that way, then everything that you're afraid of becomes this amazing opportunity to grow. So even by making that decision, it's no longer as scary, because you've changed it into something really exciting and something that is going to propel you forwards to become the person that you want to be, right? So I hope that makes sense. Step 3. So after you've embraced your worst case scenario, you have a decision, right? there are only two choices as far as I can tell. I mean, maybe you can think of more, but the way I see it, you've got two choices. One, you realize that the fear's there. You have acknowledged the worst case scenario, and you still let it hold you back. So you stay stuck, you stay where you are, you stay, you know, you don't move towards your goals, okay? Or the other alternative is number 3, take massive action, okay? So now you know what the fear is. You've accepted the worst case scenario, and you know that you still want the thing that's on the other side of the fear. There's not really any choice. Like, if you still want it, you've got to go for it. So this is when you just have to get really brave and bold and take massive action towards your goal. So decide to move forwards anyway. And a brilliant question that Dan used a lot in his journey, and I've been inspired by, and I'm sure many of you on the call have heard it. A brilliant question to ask yourself is, what would I do if I was 10 times bolder? So every time, like, especially this year, I would say, like in these last 6 months, 7 months, I've asked myself, what would I do if I was 10 times bolder? And every single time the answer is like, of course I'd do that. Or yes, I would say yes to that thing that scares me. And, you know, that's one of the reasons I'm sat here now leading this webinar, because I had a conversation with Dan about how I could bring more value to my members and my apps. And this suggestion came up, and I was terrified, but I said, what would I do if I was 10 times bolder? I would say yes. And so I said yes. So that is a really great question to have, like, in your pocket and just pull it out whenever you need it. And as I mentioned before, see everything that scares you as an amazing opportunity for growth. So again, when you change the mindset to look at fear in this way, it's no longer something, you know, it's an amazing thing. Every time you feel fear, you can actually then get really excited and you can move towards the fear, because when you see it as an opportunity for growth, you know that it's exactly what you want and what you need, right? And turn fear into excitement. So kind of similar to the point above, but also, like, when you experience nerves, like say you've got to go up on stage and speak, or you've got to call your first lead, or you have to, I don't know, shoot your first advert, whatever it is, and you're feeling some anxiety, some nerves around it, those feelings in the body are exactly the same feelings that we experience when we're excited, okay? Like, you get that kind of like jittery feeling. You might feel the kind of like nauseous kind of feeling in your tummy. It's the same thing as excitement. So instead of telling yourself like, I'm scared right now, or I'm nervous right now, tell yourself you're excited, and like literally feel that excitement, and that changes everything. So just a little picture here. You've probably all heard the like cliche that like everything you want is on the other side of fear. And, you know, this is kind of another representation of this. So we stay in our comfort zone because it's safe, but all of the growth, all of the expansion, all of the magic, as it says here in the picture, it all happens outside of our comfort zone. So yeah, basically just get out of your comfort zone. And then just some final tips before we kind of open this up into a bit more of a discussion, and I can give myself a break from talking, asking questions is a really another good technique that you can use to help yourself through these kind of roadblocks that you might experience. So when we change our language to ask questions, we empower ourselves to move forwards rather than limit ourselves. So let me give you an example. So imagine you, let's stick with the YouTube example for now. So imagine you're about to, on a 90-day video journey, you're about to start the video journey and you're feeling all sorts of fear. You've never recorded a video before and you're really worried about what other people are going to think. You don't know what you're going to say. You don't think that you've got any value to share. And so what we all often do is we'll say to ourselves, oh, you know, I'm not good at this. I've got no value to share, or I don't know how to make a great, interesting video. And by doing that, we immediately kind of limit ourselves because we're just saying it like it's fact. But if we can ask a question instead, we open up the mind's possibility to start answering that question. So for example, instead of saying, I haven't got anything interesting to share, you could say, how could I make a really interesting video? What things could I talk about that would be valuable for people? What can I share? How can I do this? So making it into a question, the mind straight away starts to say, it starts to answer the question. Yeah, so you'll start to come up with ideas, and you'll get some examples of things that you can talk about, where you do have value, where you have got something powerful that you can share with other people, and that helps you to move forwards. Point number 2, the Wonder Woman pose. So it can be Wonder Woman pose, or maybe you can think of a male alternative. I don't know, He-Man or something. But Dan taught me this when I was in one of these phases where I was stuck, and you may have heard him speak about it. But basically, if you can imagine the picture of Wonder Woman, she's standing, like she has her hands on her hips, and she's standing up very tall, very confident, feet are like hip width apart, firmly planted on the ground, chin is slightly lifted, and there's just this like really strong, confident stance. So anytime that you're not feeling good about yourself, you're feeling fear, you're nervous about something that you need to do the Wonder Woman pose for 5 minutes, and it will change the chemistry in your body. And there's a whole science behind it, and I know that Tony Robbins talks about it. It's like there's no, I don't even remember it, but it works. And just try it the next time that you feel bad, or even when you don't feel bad. Try it when you feel good. It will make you feel even better. And you could even put that into your morning routine and practice it every morning, and start your day off like feeling super, like a superwoman, like Wonder Woman. Point number 3 here is a book that probably a lot of you have heard of. It's talked about a lot in the SFM journey, but if you haven't, Mel Robbins' The 5-Second Rule. It is fantastic for dealing with fear. Essentially, anytime that you're feeling blocked, anytime that you're stopping yourself from doing what you want to do, you just count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then go do it. So it's like a pattern interrupt. It stops you from repeating the same patterns that you've been repeating over and over and over again your whole life. And you can use it for simple little things. Like, I think the first thing that I started to use this with was, I had this awful habit of hitting the snooze button. So when I was living in Thailand at the end of last year, there was a lot of different events happening every evening, and I was like going out most evenings and meeting people, and having a nice time socializing. And so I wasn't often getting to bed as early as I would like. So when my alarm clock would go off in the morning, I was just getting into this really bad habit of pressing snooze and snooze again and snooze again. And I use the 5-second rule to get out of that habit. But it's also really powerful when you're facing any fear, because the mind within that short amount of time, within 5 seconds, the mind will start to talk you out of the thing that you want to do, because it has all of these reasons to try and keep you safe. So yeah, great book to read if you haven't read it. And then the last point, which I know Catherine is like offering an amazing service in this group to help people to find their accountability groups and team people up with partners and groups of people that can help hold each other accountable. So having accountability beyond yourself is really powerful to help you face fears and help you keep moving forwards with the things that you need to do. And you know, like the Transcend You Challenge is a perfect example of that, where not only was there accountability, but there was also kind of public humiliation on the line. And also, you know, there were forfeits that people had agreed to, mostly in terms of like paying large amounts of money if we didn't do what we said we were going to do. So you can take it as far as that if you want. You know, go on your Facebook page, announce to the world that you're going to do this thing. And if you don't do it, you'll do whatever forfeit you decide to do. The key is to make the forfeit something that is really painful. You know, like don't just say, oh, I'll pay 20 quid to such and such charity, because that isn't, you know, when you really don't want to do something, you'll pay the £20 rather than do the thing you don't want to do. But if you say, I'm going to pay £500, you're going to think twice about that. So yeah, you can kind of hold yourself accountable in that way. So that's the final tip. Okay, so let me get out of this screen share and I can actually see you all again. There you are. So I couldn't really see any of you while that was going on. So did that make sense? And first of all, if anybody's got any questions about any of that, then please just feel free to unmute or raise your hand. And all made sense? Yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, cool. Okay. And so has anybody got any experiences they want to share? So maybe you've already experienced overcoming some fears and you'd like to share something you've learned or something that you know has helped you. Maybe we can add to this pile of tools and tips. Or maybe you're facing a fear right now, and you know, even though you've just heard everything I said, you still feel like it's a struggle and you're not really sure how you could overcome it. And if you're brave enough and you want to come out, we can try and pick it apart for you. So who's going to be Philip? Yeah, you want to come out? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Okay, Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Philip?
And how's everybody else doing? Good to see everybody. Yes, Alex. Where I'm at now is adding my story.
Okay.
So it's not as much as the fear of putting my story out there. It's just I don't enjoy writing. Basically, I would rather talk than write.
Okay.
So for me to write a story, I would rather do any task than do that. It's like really hard work to write, and especially about myself. So I was actually thinking when I found out I had to do that, I says I'm going to write a few bullet points and then pull my wife into this because she's good at writing.
Okay.
But is that the wrong thing to do then?
Well, first of all, when you say story, are you talking about for your website or for, you said for an advert? What?
Yeah, it's for my website. Basically, it was Stuart asked to download and read that attraction marketing manual.
Yep.
And then I'm just going through that, and then it says about, you know, putting your story out there, basically.
Okay, so this is like for an about me page, something
Exactly.
like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, not enjoying doing something is different to having fear about it. You know, like we all have different strengths, right? You know, some of us are enjoy writing and are really good at that. Others of us are better at talking, might feel more confident on video. So I mean, the thing that came to mind for me, and if anyone else has got any other suggestions, feel free to jump in. But you said you don't really like writing, but you don't mind like talking and being on camera, right? Did you say that?
Yeah.
Or yeah. Or I wasn't sure if I just heard you say that somewhere else. So why don't you just make a video? Why don't you make a video and put it on your website and tell them about yourself on the video?
Well, I suppose I could do that. That is a thought.
And you could just write something very simple, very short to start with, and don't make it such a big deal, and just put a video on if that's how you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I could do that. You were talking about the fear there. You said about fear, that's what it is, fear itself. I heard someone say a good definition of fear, which is brilliant, but it's putting it into practice, isn't it? All these things. It's false evidence appearing real.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, like, it's all very well to know this stuff and like you hear it over and over again, but until you really experience it, it's a, it is totally different. But that's why the awareness is the point number one, because until you have the awareness that, like, a lot of the time we don't even realize that it's fear that's holding us back. We'll just be procrastinating, or we'll be doing something else, or we'll just be distracted. We won't think about it because we don't want to think about it. But anytime you're experiencing that over and over again in your business, it's particularly if you've had something on your to-do list for a while and you haven't made a start with it, and you know that it's kind of important, but you just keep pushing it to one side, then that's the time when you really need to look at that. And you just have to be honest with yourself, and you have to actually take the time to look at that and ask yourself, like, why am I avoiding doing this? Like, what is it about this task that I'm avoiding? And usually there'll be some kind of fear underneath all of it. Yeah. Thank
Great
you.
stuff.
Thank you, Philip. Danny?
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Danny. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm fabulous. I'm going to use that Wonder Woman pose. I think that's a great idea.
It's brilliant, isn't it? I think you should get a picture of her on your wall and just have it there every day to remind you.
Nice. First, I have a suggestion for Philip. As far as not liking to write, and Stevie G actually gave me this suggestion. Rev.com. It's a website, and they'll transcribe videos. So like if I just shoot a video, say in the 90-day video journey on a certain topic, I just upload the video and they charge you like $1 a minute, and they'll send you a transcript. And then you can just, that way you've at least got something to start with, and all you have to do is revise what it is. So just tell your life story, have them type it up, and then you can make changes or have your wife do it, whichever. But that'll at least get you started, as opposed to sitting there staring at a computer screen,
Yeah, that is brilliant. Thank you for that, Danny. I've used rev.com for captions on my adverts, and yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Thank you for sharing that. And you wanted to share something else?
I relate to everything that you said, I mean, as far as everything you listed that's a possible fear, absolutely, I have had fear about, and I've done them all so far except the YouTube video, and that's happening within the next 2 weeks, so I got accountable to my accountability partner, and I've addressed it kind of like you recommended. But I think those are brilliant examples, and I've certainly experienced all of them.
Yeah.
It's just new, coming into this, every single thing about it was new. I got no problem talking to people, but talking to like a phone or a computer or recording myself or just any of that is a huge amount of fear.
Yeah.
It was very enlightening. I was glad that you put this call together. I just want to say thank you. I relate to it.
Well, thanks for coming out and sharing that, because I think that's the thing, that sometimes when we're going through these things, we think that we're the only one, and we just think that our problems are like so much worse than everybody else's, and we build them up into such big things. And the thing is, like, the great thing about this community is that you can share all of that stuff, and there will be somebody who's either been there and totally gets you, or is going through the same thing like right now. And you know, it feels so much better when you can understand that, like, that's just part of the journey. It's just like we have to move through these things. Yeah. So what is it about your YouTube video that, because I did see you mention something about that on a post recently, and you've been procrastinating for a while, have you, or what's been going on there?
Yeah, I mean, just to be honest, I started out on Bing, right, just so I could understand how to do the tracking and all that stuff, and to read the data. And my goal has always been to get on YouTube, and it is, I guess, it's just shooting an ad, and I did shoot a first rough draft ad, and it's terrible, and that's cool because I expected it to be terrible. Like my thank you page video took me like 58 tries to get it right, but I just made like a blooper reel out of it. I stole that idea from Cordelia, I mean, she did this blooper thing. So I just made the best of it. And I've just been procrastinating it, because and I find all this other stuff to do. Like I stay busy, but it's not necessarily productive busy. Right. So,
yeah.
I had a call with Dan a while ago, and he said whenever he came up on something like that, he would just write it down to where that was the only thing on the calendar for the day, was this one thing, and that's been helpful. And, I have my accountability partner, Michael, and I had a call today. So I came up with 4 things to do in the next 2 weeks, because that's how often we meet, and have my YouTube ad done is one of those things, and go through all of Dan's YouTube training and actually do everything that's in it. And just a bunch of stuff that I need to do because I committed to doing it before Toronto's. So, I mean, I'm going to get it done because I committed to doing it, but I'm just waiting until the last minute, what I mean? Just to be real. So I just make it happen,
That is what we do. Like, that's exactly what I do. I'll get so busy with so many things, and I'll convince myself that I'm doing everything. I'm like a wizard at this. I've done all my emails. My house is spotless. I've done all my exercise. I've done everything. I've ticked everything off my list. Oh, just apart from that thing. And it is, it's a great tip, actually. Thank you for sharing that again. To make it the only thing on your to-do list. And this is very powerful. And another question that I know like is used a lot in the community is like, what's the one thing that's going to have the most impact? What's the one thing I can do today that will have the most impact on my business or moving me towards whatever goal it is I'm trying to get towards? And it's usually the thing that scares you the most. And if you can know what that one thing is, that is the only thing that goes on your to-do list for that day. And then, that's it. You've got no excuse. You come to your to-do list and there's nothing else there, So, I mean, I use the Trello app, which I know a lot of people use as well. But if you're not aware of it, it's a really great way of organizing yourself. You basically can just download it onto your computer. It's called Trello, Trello, and it's basically like, instead of having loads of bits of paper and to-do lists in a notebook, or constantly like piles and piles of paper everywhere, you have instead this app on your computer, and it's a really great tool to organize all of the things you need to do. And that way you can kind of create a board where it has like today's task. So I have a board, and this is based off of what Dan has taught me. I have a board that is Alex's day, and when I open that up in the morning, it never has more than 3 things in it. And the top thing is the thing that's the most important thing that I need to do that day. So if nothing else gets done, that thing has got to be done. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Great. Thank you, Danny. Anybody else want to come out and share? Claire, hello. Nice to see you here. Do you know how to unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah? Brilliant.
Is that working?
Yes, can hear you.
Firstly, apologies everyone for being late. I just rushed in from work. I feel like a Bond villain with the cat on my lap. That's lightning come to join in, so sorry.
Oh, did you hear my cat? Well, she's not my cat, but I'm cat sitting. And while I was doing the presentation, she just suddenly decided to purr really loudly. And I was like, she's not now.
It's always comforting. Yeah, so I love that, worst case scenario. That really is so powerful. And I remember the first time I kind of got my head around that, it was Tim Ferriss actually with Fear Setting. So some years ago when I started reading his stuff, The 4-Hour Work Week, and it was really powerful for me in unplugging a lot of kind of fears. If I can cope with the worst case scenario, then I'll just step out and do it. And actually since then I've seen that I've been much bolder in a lot of my decisions in life. But the other thing I wanted to mention was the little video. I shared it on the Facebook, on the tribe group, the little video that you shared, Alex, about how little time you've got left if you just do the maths and assuming you're in good health until, you drop off the face of the planet around 83 if you're lucky, how little time you've got left if you're just living for the weekends. And that really scared me. And so after that, I actually got a photo of my mum out, and my mum is, she's late stage Alzheimer's. She's in a home a few miles away from here, and I often feel that my mum, she had a wonderful life, and she was a great mum, and still I love spending time with her now. It's really quiet kind of space. But she often spoke to me later on when I got older into my teens about her dreams and things she hadn't achieved. And so I've got her photo up, and I've got it in about 4 different places on my walls. My entire house has just turned into my mastermind. So luckily I live on my own because I've got stuff all over the walls. I've got all of the 5 leaders, the 5 things that leaders do, stuck in different locations. So if I'm brushing my teeth, I'm reading one, and I've got whiteboards like that you can just put up on your own wall, or just sheets, and I write down my lists. And I got a lot from Stuart's productivity video as well. But the real key thing that motivates me every day is just seeing my mum's beautiful face smiling back at me, and just think, if she was able now, and she was here, she would be so supportive through this journey, and she'd just be really cheering me on. So that's a big motivator for me. But that sense of time slipping by, I know that it's a bit of a midlife kind of, it's no surprise that I'm in my 40s, but you kind of reassess everything. But yeah, that was really powerful for me. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Thank you for coming out and sharing that. And, it is true. Like, we can waste so much time because of fear, and the fear, I know, I recently did the Landmark Forum, which, if you've been, Charles, but yeah, Dan's also been talking about it because he did it a few weeks before me, and it honestly, it has changed my outlook in so many ways, because the things that we're afraid of, that's why that quote, that Franklin Roosevelt quote, is so powerful when you really get it. Because the fear that we create in our mind, the reality is never that bad, but we delay ourselves, we waste time, we cause ourselves so much stress and anxiety. As part of the Landmark Forum, you're encouraged to make phone calls and speak to people about really vulnerable, authentic things that maybe you've been afraid to say, or you've not wanted to share for whatever reason. And the fear that I was experiencing about just picking up the phone and speaking to people in my life that I care about, but sharing real genuine things that I had been afraid to say to them, it was so intense, that I got physical responses to it. But every single time after I made those phone calls, it was oh, that wasn't so bad. And actually, they really appreciated me saying what I said, and it, it made big changes in my relationships. And that's just like one small example, but the fear that we feel, it is just a primal instinct to keep us safe, but a lot of the time it's not needed, and it's not justified, because the outcome is never going to be that bad. So yeah. Great, thank you, Claire. Anybody else? What time are we at?
Yeah, I can share. I'd like to share. Yeah.
Oh, hello, Charles. Okay, well, we've got 5 minutes. So.
Okay, great. Well, my name's Charles Caution. I'm in Australia, so it's a bit early in the morning here.
Wow.
And I've done 10 years of Landmark, and about fear. I mean, a lot of who we are today is based on your childhood. And when I was 18 years old, I left boarding school. I went to an English boarding school in Holt in Norfolk, and we went to Amsterdam. And the first night, we went and saw Susie and the Banshees, a good old punk band. And we said, "Oh yeah, we don't need to stay in a backpack. We'll stay in the Vondelpark. We'll stay in a park." And we didn't know that the Vondelpark back in 1981 was recognized as ranked in the top 3 of the worst places to sleep, or you'll get mugged. And I got mugged. Not only did I get mugged, I got stabbed. Right? So in the Landmark Forum, I mean, I've never forgotten that moment, but in the Landmark Forum, I remember that moment, as you can imagine, right? And what I said about what happened was I got stabbed. What I made it mean about life was, I made it mean life's dangerous. And who did I become? I became brave. I became fearless. I became reckless. And I was this wild guy. So when I did the Landmark Forum when I was 30 years old, I had a great life. It was pretty wild. I did all sorts of crazy things. And, when I did the Landmark Forum, I went, whoa, that 18-year-old experience really had me become brave and fearless. So, I certainly know about fear because I nearly died. And I think, one of the things that like you said, Alex, is really to notice your fear and transform it to excitement, like that heart starts thumping, or whatever. And and then perhaps, channel that energy, in terms of overcoming your fear. Phil, I want to give you a contribution. You're mentioning about, writing, and one of the things that we learned at Landmark, one of the things that's really cool, you could ask your friends, is if you ever want to write about yourself, best thing to do, or a good idea, is to say, for instance, Alex, if I walked out the room and someone said, "Excuse me, Alex, what's Charles like? What would you say?" And what you'd say is what you'd say, right? But it'd be a contribution to myself, and off you go. And so, Phil, you could ask your wife, if I walked out the room, darling, and someone said, "What's Phil like? What would you say?" And I promise you, one thing she'll say is all your good stuff, or you really, all the things that you're really good at. If you're brave enough, if you're really brave enough, you can say, "Oh, Phil sounds like a good guy. What's really bad about him?" And off your wife will go, But anyway, a great way of finding out how you occur for other people. You say, when you walk out the room, ask your friends and family, what's that guy? What are you like when you walk out the room? It's a great interviews. We call them interviews. They're great. Great insight.
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Charles. Yeah, it's always so hard to write about ourselves, and we don't see ourselves the same way that other people see us, right? We can be a lot more critical. So yeah, that's a great tip for Philip. Yeah, ask your friends, ask your family what they would say about you, and write that. Yeah, great. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left. Anyone else dying to say anything, wants to share? Anyone sitting there afraid to come out and share? Here is your chance. Face that fear, do it anyway. Say hello, even if you feel you've got nothing to say, you can just come out and say hi. Go on. Yeah, awesome. Well done, John. How you doing?
Hey, Alex. Yeah, good. You?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I'll just touch on basically what Mr. Danny Ham was saying. Yeah, all those fears are mine. I'm terrified of talking in front of people, terrified of being on video, listening to myself. I've always struggled with conversation, all that sort of thing. So yeah, kind of everything all into one ball for me. Yeah, when it comes to fear, but being in a community like this and actually being honest with yourself and putting it out there in front of others makes you realize it's not so bad. And if you're just honest and you try and confront those fears head on but sensibly without torturing yourself, things do become a lot easier over time. So yeah,
brilliant. And what so what fear are you, is there one that you're like stuck on right now, that's where you're facing that?
Yeah, again, the same as Danny, YouTube video.
Right.
I've got like 3 scripts down at the moment, one which is pretty strong and I'm happy with, but actually trying to find a decent backdrop, find just a way to put it across where you're not sounding like a robot or anything is it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm getting there. I think I'm getting there. Just trying to keep it the 90-day video challenge, and building that confidence slowly, and then eventually just nailing it. That's the idea.
Yeah, and remember, it's like Danny said, like the first video, it's gonna be shit. Like it's okay. Like we all have to start somewhere. Like you're not gonna smash out an amazing, well, very few people. I say, you have to be careful, because I know Emil, his first video, like it was the only one he's done as far as I know, and he's smashing it. But I think he took a long time about filming that. But yeah, the other important thing to remember is the imperfect action, right? Like we just have to do it, and it's it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. We just have to do it, and then each time we do it, it will get better. So all of those things of like worrying about the backdrop and worrying about how you look and how you sound, and all of that stuff, like none of it really matters, because if there's a fear there that's stopping you doing it, you're going to come up with every single excuse why it's wrong, why you can't do it right now. That's what the mind will do. It will make up every single excuse to stop you actually doing the thing that scares you. So yeah, the answer is just to do it anyway. And
a contribution as well, John and Danny, is mirror work. Look in the camera, do mirror work, and be with the camera and start practicing in the mirror. It's a good mirror work is a good way to practice with yourself.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And they said, be with the camera.
Well, I don't know what. Well, like, it must be really early in there, because you got so much energy, Charles. It's amazing.
Much coffee, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Too much coffee. Okay. All right. Well, so we got 2 people. So by the next time I do my next webinar, we're going to hopefully hit. Well, it won't be about fear. It'll be a different topic. But hopefully we'll have Danny and John. You will have done your YouTube video. So no shaking, John. I'm going to hold you accountable now. You can get it done in the next 2 weeks, right? Can you do that? Can we hold you accountable to that? Yeah. Well done. Brilliant. Okay. 2 weeks. You've got it. I will just share quickly that it was JJ forcing me to shoot my first YouTube video before I went to the Marketing Mastery event. That was what made me do it, because I was doing exactly the same thing as you. I was avoiding it, putting it off, making excuses, getting busy with other stuff. And then I had a call with JJ, and he was like, look, come on, Alex, you've been here long enough. Like, you know what you need to know. You just need to do it. And I was like, okay, JJ. It was like a dad's telling me off. And I've got so much love and respect for JJ. I was like, okay, I'll do it. And he's like, how long is it going to take you? And I was like, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4. I don't know. And he was like, right, 2. You can do it in 2 weeks. And I was like, okay. And so once I had that, I had to do it. Had to do it then. And so I just got over the hurdle, and it's not so hard anymore, So so if you'll allow us, we'll hold you accountable to that, John and Danny. 2 weeks, counting.
Without question, it'll be done.
Yay, love it. Okay, great. Right, well, before we wrap up, just quickly, this call, as I said, it will be a different topic every fortnight, but there won't be one. It's going to be 3 weeks till the next one now, because I was sick last week. It's kind of messed up the dates a bit, and I'm not available in a fortnight's time. So the next call will be on the 21st of August, and there'll be a post in the group about it. Not sure what the topic's going to be yet. I've got a bunch of ideas, so there's time to get suggestions in. If you want anything in particular covered, you can let me know. But otherwise, it will just be announced in the group shortly before. Okay. So thank you all so much for coming. It's been great to see you all, and good luck smashing those fears. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.